Before you go out into the world seeking validation, before you start demanding how a man should treat you, and before you point to what you deserve from others, you must confront the first and most powerful question: who are you? Too many people are running around asking, who is he? What does he bring to the table? How should he treat me? But the real foundation of respect, power, and influence begins with self-awareness. If you don't know your own identity, if you don't understand your own values, if you don't live with clarity about your mission, then you cannot expect anyone to recognize your worth. Knowing who you are is the armor you put on before you step into any relationship, any career, any battle. Without that armor, you are vulnerable, and people can define you however they want. Self-knowledge is the ultimate weapon. When you know your strengths, you play to them. When you understand your weaknesses, you train them into strengths. When you identify your values, you live by them regardless of who enters or exits your life. This makes you unshakable. A queen is not crowned because of who stands next to her. She is crowned because she already embodies the discipline, the dignity, and the power that command respect. Ask yourself, what do you stand for? What is non-negotiable in your life? What habits define your daily existence? Too many people are waiting for someone else to complete them, when in reality, you must be whole before you can even think about partnership. If you do not sacrifice the time to discover yourself, you will sacrifice your future to confusion, heartbreak, and weakness. Sacrifice now means sitting in silence to reflect when others distract themselves with noise. It means cutting out toxic circles so you can hear your own voice. It means choosing books, mentors, and discipline over meaningless entertainment. It means building your body, sharpening your mind, and strengthening your spirit while others waste their hours scrolling, gossiping, or settling. That sacrifice might feel lonely, but it is forging you into someone unbreakable. When you finally stand tall in your identity, no one can reduce you to less than you are. Knowing who you are is not about arrogance, it is about certainty. It is about carrying yourself in a way that says, I do not need approval to breathe. I do not need attention to matter. I do not need permission to rise. That certainty makes men step back and take notice. They recognize a force of nature when they see one. They recognize that you are not another follower drifting with the wind. You are the storm that commands respect. The sacrifice comes when you stop chasing temporary validation. Stop asking, will he like me if I look this way? Will they respect me if I talk this way? Will I be loved if I act this way? That is weakness, and weakness attracts manipulation. Instead, know your vision. What do you want out of life? Where are you going? What mountain are you climbing? People are drawn to those with direction. Men treat women like queens not because they demand a crown, but because they are already walking like royalty. Focused, disciplined, unstoppable. Every queen was once a warrior. Before she wore the crown, she sharpened her weapons. Before she received loyalty, she demonstrated leadership. Before she was respected, she respected herself. That is the power of knowing who you are. If you do not define yourself, the world will define you for its own convenience. And the moment you let others write your identity, you become their pawn instead of their equal. Sacrifice is the key. Sacrifice the need to be liked and embrace the drive to be respected. Sacrifice the shallow compliments that come from pretending and embrace the deep respect that comes from authenticity. Sacrifice comfort today and build a legacy tomorrow. Do you want to be treated like a queen? Then stop acting like a pawn. Do you want loyalty? Then first master loyalty to yourself. Do you want devotion? Then show devotion to your mission. Knowing who you are is about alignment. Your actions match your words. Your values match your choices. Your vision matches your grind. That alignment makes you magnetic. People know you are not fake. They know you cannot be swayed by cheap offers or easy promises. They know you are carved from sacrifice, and that makes you untouchable. When you know who you are, you walk into every room with presence. You do not shrink. You do not beg. You do not compete for scraps. You create your own standard. And when men see that, They don't just treat you as an option, they treat you as the standard. You cannot demand clarity from another person if you are living in confusion about yourself. You cannot hold a man accountable to a standard that you do not first live by. Before you ask who he is, before you demand what he brings to the table, you must first ask yourself, who am I? What do I bring? What do I stand for? Without this self-examination, your expectations become empty wishes, and your relationships become unstable. Knowing who you are is about more than surface identity. It is not about labels, job titles, or appearances. It is about the core that drives you, the beliefs that guide you, and the mission that fuels your decisions. If you cannot articulate your values, you will accept anyone else's. If you do not know your boundaries, you will allow them to be crossed. If you do not understand your worth, you will settle for less than you deserve. That is why the greatest act of preparation before evaluating another is to evaluate yourself. This requires sacrifice. Sacrifice of illusions, sacrifice of distractions, sacrifice of dependence on others to validate your existence. Too many people jump into relationships hoping the other person will give them identity. That is weakness. A queen does not borrow her crown, she earns it by first ruling over herself. The discipline of self-discovery means being brutally honest about your flaws, your fears, and your goals. It means investing time into understanding what drives you and what drains you. It means refusing to hide behind excuses or stories that make you look good but keep you small. When you know who you are, you cannot be easily deceived. A man may talk, promise, or pretend, but you see through it because you are already grounded in reality. You are not desperate to believe empty words because you have already built truth within yourself. That is the advantage of self-awareness. It sharpens your discernment. It gives you the power to separate substance from illusion. Without that, you become vulnerable to manipulation. Ask yourself, what is my mission in this season of life? What goals am I chasing? What battles am I willing to fight? What sacrifices am I ready to make? These are not small questions. They are the questions that determine destiny. And if you avoid them, you cannot lead yourself, let alone expect another to lead with you. Knowing yourself means building standards that are not negotiable. Too many people change their values depending on who they are with. They bend their principles because they fear being alone. They compromise their vision because they crave attention. But a true queen does not lower her crown to make others comfortable. She keeps her standards high and lets only those who rise meet them. That strength comes from deep self-knowledge, from clarity about what you will and will not allow. The sacrifice is real. It means walking away from situations that feel good but do not align with your purpose. It means saying no when others expect you to say yes. It means being alone long enough to grow instead of rushing into the wrong arms out of impatience. Sacrifice now and the reward is later. Peace, respect, fulfillment. But without sacrifice, you trade long-term honor for short-term comfort, and that always ends in regret. When you know who you are, you communicate differently. You don't chase, you attract. You don't beg, you command. You don't accept scraps, you demand respect. Men can feel the difference. They know when they are dealing with someone who is desperate for approval versus someone who is rooted in her own identity. That rootedness makes you magnetic. It creates presence. It commands attention without needing to ask for it. A queen knows herself before she ever asks who stands beside her. She has built discipline in her body, strength in her mind, and resilience in her spirit. She has sacrificed weakness, excuses, and distraction. She has studied her own soul until she is clear about her values and mission. That clarity becomes her power. That power becomes her crown. And only then does she look outward to ask the question, who is he? And is he worthy to walk beside me? Power begins with identity. Before you measure another man's character, before you judge his vision, before you decide what role he should play in your life, you must first know the dimensions of your own. Too many people are experts at dissecting someone else's behavior while remaining blind to their own. They want to evaluate his commitment, his values, his goals, but they have not yet committed to their own. That is why relationships collapse, why respect is lost. Why loyalty fades? Because the foundation of self-awareness has not been laid. Knowing who you are is not an easy process. It requires discipline. It demands sacrifice. It forces you to look into the mirror without filters, without excuses, without the comfort of denial. It is not about who you pretend to be in public. It is about who you really are when no one is watching. It is about identifying your triggers, your weaknesses, your strengths, and your dreams. It is about refusing to live a shallow existence built on appearances and instead building a core that cannot be shaken. When you truly know yourself, you no longer chase external validation. You no longer cling to people in desperation. You no longer compromise your vision just to be accepted. You stand rooted in your own power. That is when men see you differently. They know they cannot play games with someone who has clarity. They know they cannot manipulate someone who is unshakable. They know they cannot treat you as an option when you walk like the standard. Self-awareness begins with questions. What is my mission? What am I willing to fight for? What habits am I building daily that align with the life I want? These questions are not optional. They are essential. If you don't define yourself, the world will define you. If you don't set your own boundaries, people will push you beyond them. If you don't know your worth, someone will convince you to settle for less. This is why knowing yourself is not just wisdom, it is survival. The sacrifice comes when you stop distracting yourself and finally face those questions. It means sitting in solitude when everyone else is chasing noise. It means journaling when you would rather scroll. It means reflecting on your choices instead of running from them. It means being honest with yourself about the areas where you are weak and committing to grow stronger. This process is not glamorous. It is not easy, but it is necessary if you ever want to stand as royalty in the eyes of others. Knowing who you are also means identifying what you will not tolerate. If you don't decide this in advance, emotions will trick you and circumstances will pressure you. You will end up bending your principles because you never built the strength to stand firm. Boundaries are not barriers, they are protections of your dignity. They separate what serves your vision from what sabotages it. Without boundaries, you are open to chaos. With boundaries, you preserve your energy for greatness. When you know who you are, you no longer waste time chasing every opportunity or every person who comes your way. You know what aligns with your destiny, and you reject what doesn't. This focus is magnetic. People recognize that you are not desperate, that you are not hungry for approval, that you are not swayed by shallow temptations. Men especially treat you differently when they see this. They understand they are dealing with someone who has done the work, someone who carries herself with clarity and discipline, someone who will not be impressed by surface promises, but only by substance. Every queen must conquer herself before she commands others. She must conquer her fears, her doubts, her laziness, her excuses. She must sacrifice comfort to embrace discipline. She must sacrifice temporary pleasure to pursue permanent fulfillment. She must sacrifice fitting in to stand out. These sacrifices create her strength, and that strength becomes the aura that commands respect wherever she goes. If you do not know yourself, you will always ask, "Who is he?" with insecurity, with doubt, with confusion. You will measure him against standards that you yourself do not embody. You will expect loyalty when you have not yet mastered loyalty to yourself. You will expect respect when you are still living in ways that disrespect your own values. But when you know who you are, everything changes. The question, who is he, no longer comes from desperation, but from discernment. You are not searching for someone to complete you. You are searching for someone who is worthy to stand beside you. Before you ever ask what a man's vision is, you must know your own. Before you ever question his level of discipline, you must examine your own. Before you ever measure his loyalty, you must first measure how loyal you are to yourself and your mission. Too many people rush into relationships and demand clarity from others when they themselves are living in confusion. They want a man with direction, but they have not defined their own path. They want a man who is confident, but they are still doubting their own reflection. They want a man who treats them like royalty, but they have not yet crowned themselves with self-respect. Knowing who you are is not optional. It is the foundation of everything. Without it, You will accept anyone who comes along because you do not have the strength to filter. Without it, you will be swayed by smooth words because you lack the grounding of truth. Without it, you will bend to temporary emotions because you have no anchor in lasting principles. When you know who you are, you cannot be shaken, you cannot be manipulated, you cannot be treated as less than you deserve. This level of self-awareness is not built overnight. It is forged through sacrifice. It is built when you choose discipline over distraction, silence over noise, purpose over pleasure. It is built when you spend time understanding your deepest motivations instead of covering them up with entertainment or excuses. It is built when you hold yourself accountable before expecting accountability from anyone else. The hard truth is this: you cannot ask him to lead if you have not yet learned how to lead yourself. Sacrifice is the price of identity. You must sacrifice the comfort of blaming others and instead take full responsibility for your own growth. You must sacrifice shallow relationships that drain your energy and instead surround yourself with environments that challenge you. You must sacrifice old habits that keep you small and replace them with habits that push you toward your potential. These sacrifices may cost you temporary comfort, but they give you permanent strength. And that strength becomes your shield against anyone who tries to treat you as ordinary. When you know who you are, you stop begging for attention, you stop chasing validation, you stop lowering your standards just to keep someone in your life. Instead, you rise, you focus, you grind, you build, and in doing so, you create an energy that makes people take notice. Men respect a woman who respects herself. Men honor a woman who honors her mission. Men step carefully around a woman who has clarity about who she is and where she is going. That presence is earned, and it is earned through sacrifice. Ask yourself, what am I building? What legacy am I preparing? What values define me? What weaknesses must I eliminate? These are not light questions. They are the questions that shape destinies. If you cannot answer them for yourself, then you have no ground to demand answers from anyone else. But when you can answer them with clarity and conviction, then you stand as someone unshakable, and you naturally filter out anyone who does not match your level. Self-awareness is also about alignment. Your words, your actions, and your choices must match. Too many people claim they want to be respected, but they carry themselves without discipline. Too many people say they want loyalty, but they betray themselves with inconsistency. Too many people demand greatness, but they settle for mediocrity in their own habits. That contradiction destroys credibility. But when you know who you are, there is no contradiction. There is alignment. Your life becomes a statement without you needing to speak. Men are drawn to clarity. They respect certainty. They admire focus. They do not treat you like a queen because you beg for it. They treat you like a queen because you embody it. And embodiment comes only from knowing yourself at the deepest level. You must know what you represent, what you refuse to tolerate, and what you are working toward with unrelenting drive. When that identity is clear, you never need to ask, does he see my worth? Because your worth radiates from your presence before you even speak. Every queen must first rule herself. Rule your mind so that it does not control you with fear. Rule your emotions so that they do not drag you into weakness. Rule your habits so that they do not sabotage your future. Rule your vision so that distractions cannot steal your focus. When you have achieved this level of dominion over yourself, then and only then do you have the strength to ask who he is and whether he is worthy to walk beside you. Before you demand a man's respect, you must first respect yourself. Before you question his intentions, you must be clear about your own. Before you expect him to show up with discipline, consistency, and focus, you must already be living those qualities in your own life. Too many people point outward before they look inward. They want to measure his character without measuring their own. They want to evaluate his direction without knowing their own path. They want to demand royalty from someone else when they have not yet crowned themselves with self-awareness and strength. Knowing who you are is not just an idea, it is a daily practice. It is reflected in your habits, in your words, in the way you carry yourself, in the standards you refuse to compromise. It is built through decisions you make when no one is watching. It is reinforced in the sacrifices you are willing to endure to protect your future. Identity is not something you claim once and forget. It is something you prove every single day through action. The truth is, you cannot ask a man to treat you like a queen if you are not already living as one. Queens are not crowned by accident. They are prepared through discipline, through sacrifice, through relentless commitment to becoming the best version of themselves. A queen does not wait for someone else to tell her who she is. She knows. She does not look for completion in another. She arrives complete. She does not crumble when people walk away because her foundation is not built on people. It is built on principles. This requires sacrifice, sacrifice of short-term pleasure, sacrifice of shallow relationships, sacrifice of distractions that pull you away from your mission. It means choosing growth over comfort, solitude over noise, consistency over excuses. These sacrifices may feel heavy, but they forge strength, and that strength makes you untouchable. Men can feel it. They know when they are dealing with someone who is rooted in her identity. They know they cannot bring chaos to someone who has built order within herself. They know they cannot play games with someone who has already defined her standards. When you know who you are, you stop begging for recognition. You stop asking people to validate you. You stop comparing yourself to others because you understand your own lane. That freedom changes the way you move. You walk with presence. You speak with authority, you carry yourself with dignity, and without saying a word, you set a tone that demands respect. That tone is not something you create on the spot, it is something you build through years of self-discipline and sacrifice. Ask yourself, what do I want my life to represent? What values will I never compromise? What battles am I willing to fight? What habits will I refuse to allow in my life? These are not casual questions. They are the blueprint of identity. If you do not answer them, someone else will answer for you. If you do not define your standards, life will hand you whatever scraps it chooses. If you do not know your purpose, you will drift into someone else's. And when that happens, you cannot expect respect because respect is earned by those who stand firm in who they are. Knowing yourself also means mastering yourself. You must master your mind so that fear and doubt cannot control you. You must master your emotions so that you do not act out of desperation or weakness. You must master your habits so that laziness and inconsistency do not sabotage your future. You must master your focus so that distractions cannot steal your destiny. This mastery is not a luxury. It is the requirement of anyone who expects to be treated as royalty. Without it, you are at the mercy of external forces. With it, you are unshakable. Men treat women differently when they encounter self-mastery. They know when they are standing in front of someone who has done the work. They know when they are dealing with someone who cannot be impressed with cheap promises. They know when they are speaking to someone who has clarity and will not compromise. That kind of presence is magnetic. It commands respect before words are spoken. It sets the tone for every interaction, and it ensures that only those who are strong enough to match your standard will remain. Every queen has fought battles in silence before she received her crown. She has sacrificed comfort for growth, distraction for focus, weakness for strength. She has disciplined her body, sharpened her mind, and fortified her spirit. She has learned who she is through struggle, through reflection, through sacrifice. And because she knows herself, she does not waste time asking shallow questions about others. She asks the right questions. Does he align with my mission? Does he respect my values? Does he walk with the same discipline I walk with? And she asks those questions not from insecurity, but from a place of clarity, because she already knows who she is before she ever asks who he is.